Good morning, Saints, from Trinity Christian Fellowship. Coming to you this morning from my kitchen table. Want to make another quick video. This morning I would like to talk with you guys about the subject of submission. Right? It's kind of the dirty S word. There's quite a few passages in the Bible that speak about submission. One of the ones that we certainly had to wrestle with about a month ago as this virus was sort of emerging on the world scene and spreading, and secular governments are trying to decide what to do, was this notion of submission to the government. Two famous passages. One of them is found in Romans chapter 13, and the other one is found in 1 Peter chapter 2. Certainly we have to think about those kinds of things, right? Church, gathering of the church is, of course, extremely important. It is one of the common ways, one of the common means of grace that God ministers to a Christian is through the local church. The local church is extremely important. And when we have secular authorities telling the local church we can't meet, that certainly raises a lot of red flags. We have to, had to listen very carefully to what it was that they were saying, and why it was that they were saying it, and make those decisions. We're on the other end of that now, so obviously you know what our decisions were, but certainly we have to think about these texts. Well, both of these texts, Romans and 1 Peter, are written in probably the late 50s AD. Christianity is not officially being persecuted yet by the state, but it is about ready to be. And it is certainly one of the religious groups in the Roman Empire that would have been kind of despised and looked down upon by the secular culture that they lived in. Monotheist did not tend to be liked at all, and then of course Christian monotheists, Trinitarians, are not liked at all by the Jews during this time at all. So they're very much a minority and very much a persecuted people, if not overt persecution, definitely kind of underlying persecution. Well, here's what the two texts say. In Romans 13:1, it says, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment." Right? And then over in Peter's first epistle, he says this: "Be subject for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether it be to the emperor as supreme," right? He's the singular monarch of the Roman Empire, "or to governors as sent by him." So you have all kinds of delegated authority underneath Caesar in that Roman system, right? And then Peter goes on similar passages. Here's the thing about these two passages: we know there's exceptions, right? We're well aware of them. Couple of high points in the New Testament is there in Acts chapter 4 and 5, where we have the authorities telling the apostles that they can't evangelize, that they can't preach the gospel, that they can't speak publicly about Jesus. And of course they do it anyway. And there's that famous line there: who should we obey? Should we obey God, or should we obey man? There's no other name given under heaven by which men must be saved. We know there's exceptions. Pastor Allen recently taught through the book of Daniel, and we know that when the civil authorities there, i.e. Nebuchadnezzar, made a proclamation saying that you weren't allowed to pray to any god or gods other than him for 30 days, right? Daniel did what he always did, and he prayed to the God of heaven. So if they tell us we can't pray, we're going to pray anyway. If they tell us we can't share the gospel, we're going to share the gospel anyway. We know there's exceptions to these rules. The shocking thing about these two passages is that in the passage, no exception is listed. You just have this blanket command, right? And the Romans passage is especially shocking because it's written to Rome, Christians in Rome. These are Christians that literally live in the same city as Caesar, and his palace. The Caesar at that time is a man named Emperor Nero, and he ranks up there. If you are a student of human history, he ranks up there probably in the top 10 of some of the most bloodthirsty, wicked, terrible rulers in all of human history. Terrible, terrible, terrible person. And yet, Paul commands the Christians there to submit to him. We know there's exceptions, but he doesn't list any, right? And so, what's going on here? Well, I think it's helpful, my own reaction. So this is kind of a confession, I guess now, if you will, an autobiographical confession. But us here, if I rewind the tape here, like a month or a month and a half, I guess, whatever it's been, when this virus first started coming on the news, and I'm watching the news, and I'm seeing how it's spread across Asia and Europe, and now it's here in North America, and it's starting to spread across North America, and I'm seeing what the government is telling me, right? And I'm reading, okay, the World Health Organization says this about whatever, about quarantine, about masks, about the way the virus transmits. I'm reading the CDC information and listening to what the best health experts in America are telling me. And when they give me suggestions, right, about how to behave, about what precautions to take to try to avoid getting this, right, I nod my head yes, and I do it, right? If they tell me, don't walk here, then I don't walk there. And don't make sure you wash this, then I wash this, right? Make sure you wear this, then I wear that. When it's a suggestion. When fast forward a week or two, nothing's changed, right? The suggestions are still the same. The health recommendations are still the same, but the government moves from suggesting or advising that I do X, Y, and Z to mandating and saying you must do X, Y, and Z. Right? And what happens when we move from suggestion to mandate? Something inside me, and I suspect something inside you, says, no, you can't tell me what to do. Right? The rebellion of the human heart is great. And that, saints, I believe, is why Paul does give no exception in Romans 13. Of course there's exceptions. He knows there's exceptions, and the audience knows there's exceptions. But the penultimate problem for humanity is we refuse to bend the knee to God, right? Mankind's problem, every man, woman, and child, it starts from this position of claiming to sit on the throne of our own lives, right? We want to be God and King of our own lives. That throne belongs to God alone. It belongs to King Jesus, right? And it is good for us to exercise our submission muscles, right? To yield to his proxy authorities that he has given us, right? It is a refusal to submit to ultimate authority, to prime authority, is man's biggest problem. And so it is good practice for us to submit to the proxy authorities that he's given us. Carefully, of course. There are times when submission, of course, submission to the governing authorities can equal disobedience to God. And in those cases, we have to engage in respectful civil disobedience. But a lack of submission is an enormous problem for us as humans, and it is good for us to practice submission.